recap for the sake of some people who came in late, and for Lisa, I will recap some of it, but I got to move on here in a moment so we can keep everyone's interest, and while I can still hold on my thoughts of what I found today. I think it's very astounding. I've always thought it's astounding what's hidden in the first 7 chapters. In a minute, if it doesn't get too late, I was trying to remember. I already knew where David and the sin of David and Bathsheba were hidden in the chapters in Genesis. Oh yeah, it's starting to come back to me. I'll cover that in a few minutes and show you how I found it. But what I was thinking about was how am I going to convince some people? And of course, it's not my job to convince the world. It's not your job to save the world. It is just my job to fulfill my calling, which is a Bible teacher. But I want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, and I want as many people as are possible to listen and believe. My ultimate goal, I'll tell you right here, is to knock people off the couch so they get up and do something before they get swept away with the events. And the events were foretold a long time ago, and of course you may have a patriot religious background. Notice I chose the word religious. The terms religious and spiritual are not synonymous, and they are worlds apart. That's what Genesis 4 is about. One man who's religious and one man who is spiritual, and the religious people always wind up trying to kill the spiritual people. There is a religious persecution coming. The conspiracies of the world have been set up through secret societies which are controlled by one specific religious group, which will institute the Inquisition, which was never outlawed. You may not bargain for what I'm about to say, but you will after the earthquake. When you hear men get up in preparedness meetings and patriot rallies and say we're going to win our country back and we're going to have a great revival, just mark it down. The guy does not know what he's talking about. Now, Daniel said that the time of the end would come exactly when the Lord had planned it. And that's when he said was the appointed time. We're dealing with specifics. You have a free will. You can get up and do right. You can get up and do wrong. But you will answer for it either way, and God already knows what you're going to do. I tried to explain to people in the past 2 weeks. God has a timetable. What's coming, you are not going to stop it. You are removed from reality if you think you are. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 says he's sending it. He is allowing it because he's going to take a bunch of lukewarm people who profess to be believers and force them to act one way or another. So what we're learning in tonight's Bible study is that the very things which we've heard all our life, the key components of the Bible, were locked away, hidden in the opening chapter. And the reason I went here was because I've been working on chapters that link up where a chapter is matching a whole year. I'm pulling out things, details, names, and events that very few people are going to believe. So I thought, well, why don't I go back and teach the first 7 chapters when I show up in Las Vegas? Then I'll expand it into the first 22 chapters, show them how words work, how God is hidden in the Hebrew language, the secrets that the Bible scholar and the university professor can't find. And then for the past 24 hours, it just kept hanging on me to go and look at the days of creation, because the details of the 7 millenniums would be hidden in there. It's pretty apparent. As I recap, I always like to add new details on the recap to keep the interest of the people that are fast learners. The book is sealed in Revelation chapter 5 with 7 seals. There are 7 millenniums. I have a chart that has the 7 numbers, the 7 colors, the 7 millenniums, the first 7 letters, the 7 days of creation. It's sitting here in my study. I hope that we get some volunteers to help us. when I get out there, I'd love to put this chart in a light box about 7 or 8 feet tall, and there's not a whole lot you can't learn from the Bible with just this chart of sevens. If you're working on the 7 mysteries of the kingdom in Matthew 13, the 7 church ages in Revelation 2 and 3, the 7 feast days, the 7 things that the Lord doth hate, they'll all be patterned off of what's in Genesis 1. So, notice that there are 7 seals that seal the book. Anyone can read the Bible. Do you know why they went out and made so many translations? It's because they didn't understand it. I told my wife today for the 100th time, what a bunch of fools. Instead of reading it and going out to the edge of the woods to pray and ask the Holy Ghost to give them revelation, because they don't understand it, it wasn't intended to be understood without the Spirit of God doing the teaching. That they decided, well, we'll make an easier translation and then we'll understand it. Well, all they did was mess it up. Every word is important. Did you notice that little word when we were doing day 4? It was a little word set, and God set them in the firmament, which had the word Nathan, which right away gave me a backup witness to teach it and to make it believable, because Nathan is the prophet in day 4. So every little word is important. And the 7 seals that lock up this Bible are all hidden right here in the opening chapter, because there are 7 mysteries, 7 doctrines that the natural man cannot understand, and they are linked right here with the days of creation. There's a mystery involving light in the first millennium. There's a mystery involving water in the second millennium. I already explained it to you. When we started this Bible study, I talked about the canopy of ice that was at the edge of outer space, which was the water divided above the firmament being the atmosphere. Water at the edge of outer space would be frozen. It was perfectly clear. On the earth they could still see the stars, but the UV rays were filtered, and that's why at the flood he says all man's days shall be 120. So that was the mystery concerning the water. Now, I didn't spend a lot of time on day 2. I did go to day 3. I was already familiar with the fact that the very details on day 3 matched Moses. Not until today did I realize that Sarah's name was hidden on the 3rd day of creation, because it said in Genesis 1:11 about yielding seed. And I knew that Sarah and seed were the same word, and also knew that I had it in my notes about Sarah, her inability to conceive a son to Abraham. And I'm going to give you some more details in a moment, just as soon as I recap. But the part about the dry land and the waters I was familiar with. Notice on Moses' day, his 3rd sign, which we read, which was Exodus 4, his first 2 signs he worked, and the Lord said, if they don't believe this sign, show them this one. Take the water and pour it out on the dry land. So we have an exact match. I didn't know till today that I'm finding the second half of Moses' name hidden in the word seas in Genesis 1:10. It wouldn't have great significance if I couldn't go over and find the word seas in verse 22, which will line up on day 5. So we got Moses in the 3rd millennium and Jesus in the 5th millennium, and of course the J can turn into an I, and we actually only have vowels in front of that word. What we just did, I don't think I'll have to recap, do I, about day 4, Ira?
Do any of you do 4?
Were there people came in after we did day 4 or not?
About in the middle of it.
Well, all we did was take a close inspection, looking at Genesis 1 through a microscope. And the word divide in Genesis 1:14 is very interesting, because David shows up in the 4th millennium. The chronology is, you can find a chronology in Unger's Bible Dictionary where he shows 4,000 years between Adam and Jesus. I'd like to do it on a big chart. It takes some time. Other men have done it, but not too many have done it and put the years on there. But Samuel and David, that's in the beginning of the 4th millennium. So on day 4, of course the word divide is used before, but when he said there were 2 great lights, one to rule the day and one to rule the night, I remembered that the word great was used with David, and of course, once we had this term to rule over, I'll give you new facts here. Someone flip over to the 4th chapter of Genesis and notice the word rule will appear. In the discussion where the Lord is giving counsel to Cain, notice that he tells him if he does right, that he will rule over his brother. And of course, we did that Bible study weeks ago. I will repeat it in great detail when I come out to Las Vegas. Cain and Abel are twins, but Cain comes out first, therefore he is the oldest. And but it is appearance, the word rule. I'm going to leave you for 5 seconds. I hate to do this in the middle of Bible study. I'm going to check one call where I'm trying to set up another Bible study. Just give me a second. I usually don't do that, but that's a Bible study that the guy knew I was going to be on tonight. He was supposed to call me earlier, setting up in Detroit. When I found the word Nathan, it really locked me into being able to share it with you. There are a lot of things I see, but I don't share because I know people won't believe them. Let me add some new facts. Not only does the word rule show up in Genesis 4, in Genesis 1:14 he says that these lights will be for signs. Now I'm going to give you the Hebrew word for signs. It's O-T-H. All you'd have to do is look it up in a concordance. All you'd have to do is look up the word signs, get a listing for Genesis 1:14, and your concordance would show you the Hebrew word O-T-H. Now, when you get over to Genesis 4, you're going to find out why I'm going to Genesis 4 in a moment. This word O-T-H appears. You don't see it by reading the English, but the Hebrew, which was our Bible lesson about Genesis 11 a few weeks ago, you've often asked, people have said, what was this mark on Cain in Genesis 4:15? The Lord said unto him, whoever slayeth Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold. The Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. Look up the word mark in your concordance, and it is the same word for signs in Genesis 1:14. It is the word O-T-H. Now notice we took an O-T-H word from the 4th day and went to the 4th chapter. So here's rule, verse 7, and here's the word mark, which is the same word for signs. Now, I may go real deep if I lose you. It's not intentional. What's on day 4 is expanded into a whole chapter here in Genesis 4. And then all the details in Genesis 4 is expanded into a whole book in book 4. Do you follow me? See, Cain kills Abel in Genesis 4. When you get to the 4th book, it talks about the cities of refuge. Yeah. Now notice that Cain's punishment was that he would be a fugitive and a vagabond in verse 12. So the person who killed someone accidentally, he had to flee like a fugitive in the 4th book of the Bible to the cities of refuge, so that the relatives didn't kill him in anger. And there's some more things here where I'm just at the edge of finding, but I'll tell you what I know at the moment. And you may not like it, but we have linked the 4th day of creation to David's name. I mean, David is the key character in the 4th millennium. He's so important. He writes the longest book in the Bible, and generally speaking, it would be about an 1/8 of the Bible, the book of Psalms. And then again, 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel is about David. So we're covering a lot of the Bible just discussing David. But now listen to me. In Genesis 4, Cain kills his brother and becomes a fugitive. But David kills a man unjustly. Uriah, the husband of Bathsheba, and he becomes a fugitive. Tell me when.
When Absalom took over.
When Absalom rebelled and he had to flee Jerusalem.
Huh.
So notice that once you get the pattern, everything else will unfold accordingly. I'm going to show you one more thing, and then I'm going to come back to this word for evening. Let me see if I can find it. It's just coming out of my memory, but I had discussed it to friends before. I said the very things in the book of Genesis are foretelling everything. Let's see if I can find it. I must be going too fast. I'll come back to it in a minute. I've got it marked here. About, I got to find Abimelech. What chapter's he in Genesis? Oh, there he is. How did I do that? Oh, I know how I did it. You have to excuse me for thinking out loud. I only got a million Bible studies in my head.
That's 26.
Well, I'm in 21. I'm trying to think if that was it. I'll run it in a second. I'll run it and I'll make that an extra. While I've got it in my mind, let me show you something else I thought of. When I was running this word EREB, which equaled 272, a variant form was 273, and the chapter I read to you on David out of 2 Samuel 7 was chapter 274. Now watch this. There's something there. I always sense it, find a little bit, and then I study it out. Notice on every day of creation, he says the evening and the morning or the particular day. He always repeats the evening and the morning. That gave me the right to put the 500 marks on each millennium. But I love doing etymology. We grow up, we learn to read, we learn to speak, and very few people take the time to see where a word came from. Tell me where the word evening came from.
Arab.
What'd they say, Ira?
Arab?
Boy, somebody's jumping ahead of me. The word evening, when you look up all the words that are defined as evening, one of the words is even. Notice when you say evening, there's an even amount of light and darkness. Do you follow me? I mean, you can look up the very word in the concordance. Let's see if I got it here in my code book. EREB. Even, evening, eventide. Now watch this. This is a big one. You could look it up in a concordance if you just looked up the word evening, or you can look in the back of a concordance, which we hope to provide. Now, let me encourage you, if you have a complaint to file and you say, I don't have a code book, I don't have this, I don't have that. It's been 3 years since I found this code, and I'm still trying to get somebody to put the numbers on the 56 pages of Hebrew words. I've had 2 people do them. They've done them incorrectly. There's a young man in Nebraska who I plan to bring to play the keyboard, and he is double-checking all these Hebrew words one at a time. The lexicon in the back of Young's Concordance is a key part of running this code, but we don't have one with the corrected numbers. Also, there's a guy in Indiana who will have all the Greek words changed into numbers by the time I get to Las Vegas. So you're going to have some tools that no one ever had before. Back to this word, 272 is its value, E-R-E-B. It means even, evening. Listen carefully. Watch what it says. Mingled people. Mingled people? So I already knew from a lot of research that the word A-R-A-B, notice it's just a change of vowels. It is still spelled with the same Hebrew letters that E-R-E-B. It depends on how they do their vowel points, on whether they go to an A or an E. So here's your word, which is in the news every day, yes?
Yes.
A-R-A-B. Now I'm going to read it. You could look it up in a concordance. I'll pick some of my favorite definitions. Notice it means darkened or toward evening. See, it's the same word.
Oh.
E-R-E-B means evening. Well, A-R-A-B means evening, toward evening. But watch, here's the part that's interesting. E-R-E-B also means mingled people. When you go to A-R-A-B, it says this, to be mingled, to mingle selves, to be mixed. Who was the father of Arabia in the Bible?
Ishmael.
And who was Ishmael?
Son of Abraham and his Egyptian slave wife.
Do you see he came from mixed seed?
Yes, right.
Now, I'm not saying anything about races. I had a guy in my Bible study in Florida, and his first name was Muhammad. And, some of these subjects you get on, they get a little touchy. But they're not intended to be that way. I always say, anybody wants to come to Bible study, as long as they want to hear it, we'll put it out. So notice when on day 3, it's still talking about seed, and it was still talking, every day has an evening and a morning, get it? At one place in the Bible, it actually uses the word twilight. So what I'm saying is there's much, much more hidden in Genesis 1 than I even imagined. You see, Abraham didn't really believe the Lord when the Lord told him that he was going to be the father of a great nation. So when he's up there in years and it doesn't appear, and Sarah can't get pregnant, he takes the handmaid, and of course he produces Ishmael. So what I'm saying is, if you study in Genesis 1 and you decide to take this further, I mean, it's all sitting right there. There's a whole lot more than meets the eye. And so everything that we will learn will be based on, from Genesis 1, we will have the colors. That's hidden, but that's how you divide the light. I mean, he's dividing the waters. He's dividing the firmament. He's dividing the night and day. So when you divide the light, you get the colors. We also have the 7,000 years, and we also have the first 7 chapters of the Bible. I'm trying to see if I can find it here. How did I do that? I hope I don't have to think out loud. I worked it a couple months back. In Genesis, there is the mention of the well, which is called Beersheba. Do you remember that? About the time I get off the phone, I'll remember how I did it. I saw the word Sheba and the word Abimelech. Let's see, it's in here twice. Oh, I found it. It is the one in Genesis 26, but let me see if I got enough notes. Oh yeah, here's how I did it. Now watch, if we can go to the simple numbers in Genesis 1 and multiply them into chapters and books, look what will happen if you go up into the higher numbers in Genesis. I was in Genesis 26, where Abimelech is at, and where Abimelech You know, they're looking at Rebecca because she's beautiful, and here's Abimelech, you know, thinking about doing something wrong, so you do see the subject matter. I'm going to take you back to David here in a minute. And when you get over to verse 33, this one well, which is what the whole argument is over, is called Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is Beersheba. I think beer is the Hebrew word for a well. Oh, I see how I found it. So, verse 34, Esau was 40 years old when he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beri, the Hittite. And I go, wait a minute here. What chapter are we in? We're in 26, and the next chapter is 27. And this is in the shadows, because when you get to chapter 278 in the Bible, who do you have? See, I've multiplied them times 10 and gone in the shadows if I'm not losing you. At chapter 278 is David and Bathsheba, which happens to be 2 Samuel 11. But tell me what nationality Uriah was. Well, do you see the roots hidden back here in Genesis 26? But, I mean, the terms and the words, but replayed in another time by the numbers.
How did you get the 278 again?
Chapter 278 is 2 Samuel 11. Remember, today we were in 274?
Yeah, but how did you get that number 278?
Well, it's a little advanced. What I'm saying is, I was just multiplying the... Here's what I did once. I sat down in the chapters in Genesis and multiplied them times 10 and went someplace else in the Bible to see if the same subject matter's there. Do you follow me?
Okay.
So, we call this the shadow chapters, and no one will believe it until they run 1,000 chapters. But you can multiply them times 10 and go there and look. And it's incredible. All the chapters in Genesis multiplied times 10, and I ran every one of them and looked, and I saw that the same subject matter was repeating, and the pattern was back here in Genesis. But sometimes when you don't find it, it's called shadow chapters. You see, Genesis 26 is where Beersheba, the Hittite, and somebody lusting after somebody else's wife. But it wasn't in the 260s. It could be anywhere in the 260s. Do you follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's 10 times 26. But it was in the 270s. It was chapter 278. But that's just an example. Before we close, let me get back to some things on day 5, even though I didn't study it out extensively today. I've mentioned this before. Jesus shows up in the 5th millennium. So on day 5, the fish and the fowl are created. Didn't we cover this a few weeks ago, Ira?
Yes.
And remember me asking, did Jesus ever go under the water? Remember me asking?
Mm-hmm.
Remember I said, did Jesus ever go up in the air?
Yeah.
Did Jesus ever create fish?
Yes.
So you see we have an exact match to Jesus showing up in the 5th millennium and what appears on day 5. Now, if you run out of material, then you've run out of your knowledge of the Bible. Which one of the days of creation keeps repeating seed? Talk to me.
Which?
Day 3, remember? Well, in the parables in Matthew 13, which one do you think is going to be about the mustard seed? It has to be the 3rd one. You follow?
Yeah.
All the original patterns, the correlation between words and numbers are set up in Genesis 1, and he will never break those rules. If there is a seed that creeps into the churches, in the 7 churches, where will that seed be in there?
The 3rd one.
It'll be in the 3rd one, the Pergamos church. You follow? How many people died in the flood on day 2? A lot of people, right? Anybody had the total, I wanted to talk to them after hours. Well, how many people die in the second church age?
Millions.
A lot of them, because it's a Smyrna church. It's the one that was persecuted by the Roman emperor. See it? If it's day 2 and it matches the second millennium, is Noah ever going to use the word 2?
Yeah.
2 by 2.
I mean, somebody flip over there. You'll find it in Genesis 6:19 and 20. You'll find it in Genesis chapter 7, verses 2, 9, and 15. If something happens on day 5, actually Jesus' first sermon, which he preaches, is Matthew 5. And have we discussed this before about when he went to be tempted of the devil, where did he come from? He was the what before he fell?
Covering cherubim.
That means he was number 5. There are 4 cherubs in Ezekiel 1, Ezekiel 10, and Revelation chapter 4. So Satan, who was one, Isaiah 14, Isaiah 28, if you want to read Ezekiel 28, if you want to read it later, he originally was which cherub? He was the 5th. So in the 5th millennium, Jesus shows up and is tempted in the wilderness by the 5th cherub. But how does he defeat the 5th cherub?
With
The word.
With the word?
Yeah.
Well, the problem is we need details. What word? What was he quoting from?
The 5th book.
The 5th book, Deuteronomy. Is it a coincidence, Ira?
No.
Go back and read them. Every quotation he gives the devil is from Deuteronomy. So notice how in Genesis he kept saying, notice on day 5 that he brought forth abundantly after their kind in every winged fowl, after his kind. Chickens don't bear turkeys unless they've been off at the biological lab where the mad scientists are today.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
Well, the animals, they don't bear. I mean, a giraffe isn't born to a hippopotamus. Well, then why do people expect a word to change from Genesis, from the opening chapter, the verses, to the particular chapters, to the particular books, to the particular millenniums? Do you see it? When something brings forth after, it has to come after its kind. So all the deep stuff, here's what people want to do. Everybody wants a shortcut. No one reads the Bible. People race off, spend decades going to church trying to see what the preacher has to say because they think he studied it longer. And then they'll go off to a book someone wrote. Well, books are good. I have a lot of them. But nothing beats just taking the rules in the Bible and reading. There are no shortcuts. It's just read, 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 read. And then when you don't understand something, you pray about it. You know, I have people, there's a couple men I call, and almost every time I call them, they found something new. And it's stuff that I haven't seen before. But you see, all I did was teach them the rules and how it worked. The rules are self-contained. Now, if all of this has been a bore to you tonight, I want to ask you something. What do you do about day 6 here in Genesis? And you see, we don't have a record in the Bible what will happen in the 6th millennium, or do we? When I show up, I plan to take many of the given years in the 1900s and show you the chapters that match, and I will pull out the very events, names, people, places, and so forth, the details, by the same way I'm working Genesis 1 today. But you could get the outline in Genesis chapter 1. If God created animals, what are they going to be doing on day 6, Ira?
Creating animals.
If God created man, what are they going to be doing?
Cloning.
They're doing beyond that, but if I talk about it, I'll get kicked off the phone. Now, I've heard Stu say a couple times, you know, he said, I got a friend in the CIA. He said this, he said that. Well, that's good. I got a few contacts. So I have to be careful what I say over this phone. But I want to tell you something. There are enemies of America on the other side of the world that have soldiers that were crazy in the lab. Did you hear me? And if anybody's listening on the phone, well, they'll have to check some of their sources. Because it's true. You want to know something? I don't have a problem believing it when I get the info, because I have the outline right here in Genesis 1. And there's something I would love to show you, but I'll wait till I get there. There was a preacher who lived in the 6th millennium, and I found his name here on the 6th day of creation this morning in Bible study. And I found it in verse 27. So, if people get mixed up, and they get mixed up when their emotions outrun their logic, whenever a person has become totally emotional and they profess to be a believer, they have some spirit dealing with them. My logic still works. Did you hear me?
Right.
I can go to the supernatural and be led where to find something. I can go to the supernatural and know when to cross town to find someone, or when to pick up the phone and call somebody 10 states over and need to talk to me. But I always switch back to logic when I deal with them. If I didn't have logic, I couldn't teach. If a person says that we're going to win the country back, they are removed from reality. If somebody says you're going to have a great revival, at the end of Revelation chapter 3, when you get to the Laodicean church age, it's just a handful of people. He's left. There are no crowds. There will be no crowds. There is no movement. He's down to the fact of knocking on the door of individuals. If any man, singular. You may have a Bible study. You may have 40 people out there. But when we come and you get immersed in the Word and you go deep, there may be 2 or 3 people left that really believe at the end of the meeting. That's all he's looking for. There is not going to be a great revival. All you have in huge movements in the United States are waves of religious emotionalism. You say, well, what about this and what about that? Well, there was a big march and there was this many people showed up in D.C. Yeah, well, how many different translations showed up with them?
Good point.
Right?
Right.
You might have 60,000 people. Well, I'll bet you there'd be about 200 different translations being carried around. The Holy Ghost is only going to honor the word that he inspired to be written and nothing else.
That's right.
And every word is important. And the people who have changed it, the Spirit can't come to them. And the curse at the end of the book of Revelation was that the plagues of this book would be added on the men that took away from that prophecy. And every new translation has taken away the words out of the book of Revelation, and they are getting ready to face the events in the book of Revelation. There is not going to be a return to the fundamentals that everyone says this country was founded on. One, they haven't done their homework. Good and evil was in this country from the beginning, just like it was every place else in the past 6,000 years. When you hear people say, well, our founding fathers were Christians, false. Then you hear some people say, our founding fathers were all Masons, false. There was good and evil from the beginning. For further details, study the arguments between Jefferson and the Adams family. So they were both even arguing who was going to die first. I'm talking about John Adams and John Quincy Adams, who wrote a book against Masonry. So you see, somebody can say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. You're not going to do anything. At the time appointed, do you think things are going to change when we run out of the 6,000 year period? And we go to day 7? They have to, because that's his word. There's the form. There's the pattern. It was said a long time ago. Just because a certain person doesn't want to become a Noah or get ready, and they want to hang on to a mental concept. Well, hey, I don't believe what you say. We have, what'd you say, Ira, 1,000 churches in Vegas?
At least, yes.
Well, there'll probably be about 999 surprises on the day of the earthquake, huh? So please do this. If something is said that you disagree with and something troubles you, why don't you walk off alone someplace in the woods and pray about it? Because if it is the truth and you reject it, light rejected will turn into lightning and it'll fry you. There was a mystery on day one, and it revolved around the word light. And Adam and Eve were clothed with light. You'll find that hidden throughout the Bible from Moses all the way to the Mount of Transfiguration. And when they sinned, the light went out. The firmament was divided with water above and below. There is a mystery about day 3. There is a mystery about day 4. There is a mystery about day 5. And the book is sealed with 7 seals. It takes a lot of study, but it will open up. When Noah, both of them, male and female, went on the boat, a houseboat, because Beth means a boat, and they divided the waters in the second millennium, both means 2, it wasn't a coincidence. There are no coincidences. There is no coincidence that Jezebel lived on day 4. There is no coincidence that the 4th parable is the woman who hid the leaven. The details that are about to happen were all hidden early. You could at least familiarize yourself with the subject. I repeat, before I get to Vegas, here's my request. You read the first 22 chapters in Genesis. We will take chapter 1 and expand it into 7 chapters, and after that, it's like 3 octaves on a piano. The next 7 chapters will only be patterned off of the first 7. Do you follow me? And then we'll do it the 3rd time. It'll still just be the same patterns, but a different octave. And the 22nd chapter means there's something left over, there's something else to come. So if you would read Psalm 119, at least familiarize yourself with the names of the Hebrew letters. And then read the first 22 chapters in the Bible. There isn't anything you can't figure out after that. And so you say, I wish we would have gone deeper. I wish we'd have had more information tonight. Read the first 22 chapters. Read the 22 names of the Hebrew letters. Because when I come, one of the first things we're going to do is take those and match them up. If you knew what happened in the first 22 chapters, you'll know what happens in the first 22 what? Books of the Bible. And if you know what happened in the first 22 books of the Bible, the next 22 will match the first 22, and the third 22 is patterned just an octave different. Do you follow me?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's in there. 3 sets of 22, you go through the alphabet 3 times and you've been through the Bible. So you keep reading. I'll talk to you next week, and if we need to change the time, Ira, take a consensus and let me know, okay?
Okay.
Al, I got to run. I got a million things to do. Appreciate you coming over. Talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you, Al.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.